Steve Moran here with Senior Housing Forum, and I'm actually recording this today from the state of Iowa, someplace I've never been before. I'm keynoting to talk about how to be the leader that everybody wants to follow. And I'm actually not sure I should be keynoting here because I'm with two amazing leaders who I think are already fall in that category, and we're going to talk a little bit about what they do. The one other thing I want to say is sort of a lead into this is that I'm convinced that some of the best operators in the United States of senior living are people that really don't have much prominence in the national scene, and I think that mostly happens because they're really, really busy running their organizations. And so one of the things we're going to talk about is an amazing occupancy rate and some amazing things where they're doing with both their teams and with their residents. And so with that, I'm going to jump into introductions. And I'm with Alan Phillips, who is the
President of Senior Housing.
And Phillips and Law, who is the
Chief Operating Officer with Senior Housing.
Perfect. So the first thing I actually want to talk about is let's just talk a little bit about senior housing, where sort of your geographical reach and size of your buildings and how big your whole organization is.
Sure. From an overall standpoint, we're looking at a 250-mile radius of Cedar Rapids. So we're covering primarily Iowa, and today we also have a property in Galena, Illinois. So we have 26 in total. Our favorite size is to build 40 to start and then add on or take over. So we like that home environment around 50 units. So we do have independent living townhomes usually on our campus, then the assisted living along with the memory care component.
And you have 26 properties, so
today.
That's about 1,000 units, something like that.
Yeah, we're about 1,300.
1,300,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, a little
Okay.
over 1,300 today.
Okay. And you've got some in the big cities, which aren't really very big by sort of national standards, right? Because Des Moines is what, 250,000 in the metropolitan area.
Sure.
But you've also got, and I almost feel bad at talking about it on video like this, but
Yeah.
I think everybody's afraid of it, but you've got buildings in, how small a community? What's the smallest?
Oh, it'll be a few
3,000.
3,000.
3,000?
population.
Yeah. So you're doing communities, and I've actually written about this a long time ago, but I've always thought that that's one of the best opportunities in the world because once you build there, it's not likely anybody else is ever going to do that. So last night as we had dinner, as we were talking, and again, thank you for the dinner. I have to tell you, this is one of the friendliest groups I've ever been to. I walk in, you want to come to dinner? I want to come to dinner. So. But you were talking a lot about your philosophy with your team and how you help them grow and I'm gonna Allison, why don't you start with that?
So on our team, on our senior housing team, we have clinical quality managers as well as operations managers. The majority of those we've homegrown them out of managers of communities. And then we really focus on our employees in our communities and offer tuition reimbursement programs, continuing education for them, and ongoing training to build them to stay with us, obviously, as well as, obviously, there's a nursing shortage in the nation, to build them up to be nurses so that we can keep them.
So let's go into a little bit of the specifics of your education reimbursement and how that works, because this is really cool.
Sure. So basically, anybody who's been with us for 1 year, we reimburse 25%, 2 years 50, 3 years 75, and 4 years 100% of their tuition. So we do require that they work full time with us, but it really works well for single moms who may work, over the weekend and then pick up their school a couple days a week during the week. So.
Okay.
We've also partnered with some of the local universities as well as the Iowa workforce, which allowed, I think we have 7 current people working with us today that are getting everything 100% paid for, all the way from daycare to basically mileage to and from school to get them as a single mom to get their degree. So,
And these are all people that are on nursing tracks?
Nursing, management, some social work as well.
Okay, so the reimbursement is, so if I were care aide and wanted to become a manager, they would apply to me as well.
Absolutely,
Right.
yes.
Okay,
Yep.
and then you also do some pretty cool stuff with health insurance too, right?
Yeah, well, we offer 12 different insurance plans. A couple of those are very high deductible, so when the community contribution, it takes basically care of the premium per month for those employees.
Okay. Now, the other thing you do is, and I'm sorry, I'm going to blow the name, so I'll butcher it, and you can correct me. You have this dream thing you do, and talk to me about that.
So we have a Dare to Dream program that basically a requirement of every one of our community managers is that they make 12 resident dreams come true per year. They have ranged from hot air balloon rides. We're recognizing one today at the conference. She actually flew out with a resident to California. It was our culinary manager to go to a wedding and then flew back with her. We've done, just this week, we had a wedding that was actually brought to the community. We catered it. The resident could not get out to her granddaughter's wedding, so they brought it to the community. Baseball games, reliving anniversaries. We've taken teachers to their old schoolhouses that haven't been there for 50 years to where they used to teach and spent the day there with them.
And we had a ride in B-52 bomber. We had a lady in one of our small communities never been to a movie at the age of 90. So she got to go to a movie for the first time. I heard she put a bunch of butter on her popcorn. But just small things that they didn't think they could ever do. And that's one of our ways of saying, this is what we're all about, is taking care of them and making dreams come true.
So one of the things I really like about it is that when I look at that in the context of the size of your communities, it's like almost anybody who is going to be a resident there for any time is likely to get a dream done, right? I mean, if you're in a 200-unit community, even if you're doing one a month, it's like your number ever coming up is really, really tiny.
Right.
But I'm thinking if I were a family member and I were walking into a community, that the odds of making that happen were really, really cool.
Right.
So we also, Alan, you and I had a conversation last evening that I really is still rattling through my head, and that's about this idea of baselines, right? And how much responsibility, because one of the things you said is your philosophy is that each executive director is the CEO of their building.
Right.
And honestly, I hear that a lot, and as I told you last night, I kind of think, yeah, you say they're your CEO, but that doesn't really mean anything because you don't get much responsibility. You have all the responsibility, but you don't actually have very much control.
Right.
But you have this sort of philosophy of increasing control over time, and you use this sort of sports metaphor, and I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so for what we talked about last night is really the baseball game. And when you think about baseball, you think about, you got this head coach, you have these pitching coaches, but the CEO in our philosophy at the community is that manager is the head coach. And yes, the nurse is on the pitching mound. And yes, Allison has a team of nurses and pitching coaches to help that nurse. But ultimately, that head coach is responsible. So, and they're responsible for the wins and the losses and how we get there. Allison's always going to be sitting up in the press box up top, and she's going to be making sure we're selling hot dogs, we're selling the beer, everyone's having a good time in the overall environment. And when they first start, yes, the foul lines are in a little bit, but over that year, I'll say, those foul lines become true foul lines, and then they work together with their peers, the other head coaches, on how they run their teams. And what we really found is their competitive nature. So when I present on a monthly basis, everyone wants to know, where are we at with occupancy? Where are we at with the nursing QA scores? Where are we at with the operations QA scores? So that competitive nature amongst us, that's why the baseball is just a great analogy of what we're really doing.
So one of the things I forgot to ask you about,
Yeah.
when you were talking about your company, and this is probably the most important thing I should have asked you about to begin with, is what's your occupancy?
Well, that's interesting because on Monday, Allison actually presented our occupancy, and our communities that we've had for greater than 2 years are at 96%. Obviously, the ones that were less than 2 years have been new builds. We're on plan. But I said it's interesting because once our culture can actually be established in a community over time, we're the place to come live. And with that, then what we're doing is just working the timing of move-ins and move-outs, but occupancy has been very, very good. We've been blessed. You know?
And so you don't look at the market and say, oh no, too much inventory, we've got to pull back, or we should be scared, or anything like that.
Oh, I don't say that we won't look at the inventory, especially as we look at what we consider to be larger markets,
Right.
let's say the Des Moines. But what we really have focused on is neighborhoods. So even if you said, well, Des Moines has way too much inventory today, we've picked communities like Beaverdale, which is basically downtown Des Moines, and we're sitting there saying, wow, Beaverdale has no senior housing other than this independent living over here. Let's offer assisted living. I'm just going to use that as an example. We opened that community last fall. 60 apartments. 45 out of 60 are filled today. In a very short period of time, in a market that most people would say is saturated. But we're focused on the neighborhood. And that's the same thing when we do then with our small towns, is looking at that small town as our neighborhood, and we're kind of then the game in town that everyone wants to move to, because they remember the stories of the Dare to Dreams and things that have happened in our community.
Well, and I think the other thing that I like about what you're doing, and this may be my sort of broader perspective that might be harder for you to see, is that I believe in most places in big or small towns, any place in the U.S., that because most senior living communities are so similar, that it's possible for one to decide that they're going to do their quality assurance and their programming and how they take care of their staff and really beat the market every time. And so without really trying, it sounds like that's what you're doing.
Yeah, we're trying.
Is those things, which is really cool. So are you continuing to grow?
Yeah, we're continuing to grow. We've, just about 2 years ago, we were down in the teens. Now we have 25 properties. I think we're going to be 20, well, we're 26. We'll be over 30 probably by the end of the year. Some of them being new build, some of them that we're taking over. We got some challenges, and we love taking some challenges of, other operators that maybe not doing as good of a job, that we're coming in and we're ready to inspire other people, I guess, and fall into that whole baseball analogy with the new management team in some of these communities. So,
well, when you really started out, we won't necessarily go into the whole story, but when you started out, you started with 3 communities that were all in terrible shape, right?
Right.
And in just a matter of time, you found Allison and turned them around.
Right.
So, so anyway, I appreciate the time. This is really. Is there anything else I should be asking about? Anything else that you're doing cool that I didn't touch on that I should have?
Anything else?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
You started to sound like you started to say one other
No,
thing.
the only other thing I wanted to say was, I think when we talk about the Dare to Dreams and the competitive nature of our managers, every month we get our managers and our one coordinator from each community all together, so there's about 35 of us, and we focus on whether that's culinary, maintenance, but then we present the Dare to Dreams, and then we vote on those. So again, we have a lot of managers here and a lot of their staff here at the conference, and they're very competitive and say, oh, mine was the best Dare to Dream, or oh, I got second place in the Dare to Dream. So making it that competitive, and then obviously getting together so we can continue to teach and train them.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I think we talked last night, Steve, that's how we formulated our company. The first 3 managers, 95% of what we do came from them. It's a real bottoms-up company. I'd always ask them, what keeps you up at night? And then they'd be, is there any way you could have a nurse on your team? We talked a little bit about mystery shopping. It's our managers asking to be mystery shop. We're a home team. We've never been called a corporate office.
Right.
We're a family. And because of that, they see they're much more engaged in an environment like that versus us being a top-down driven organization.
So the other thing that was really fascinating to me as I was sitting at the table with your nurses last night was that you guys are really, really focused on quality. I think maybe it was just the environment I was in, but I don't know that I've ever been in a place where I heard so much discussion about sort of really clinical quality, I guess, right?
Sure.
How did that happen?
I think, again, from our managers when we first started with 3, they said, we want somebody to come in and QA us so that we're not scared when the state comes in. We, again, have developed a great group of nurses led by Joy Loddick. Lots of training, but I think they've gone 23 months now without any regulatory insufficiencies. So
Wow.
they're in the buildings once a month. Somewhat quasi state surveyor, but more of that teaching and training that on-site nurse, and then obviously available by phone call at all times. Technology has really helped them as well, because obviously we're using electronic health records and EMR, so if the nurse has a question that's on site, they can pick up the phone, they can get online, see what's happening. And again, it's driven longer lengths of stay for our residents, because we're able to keep them in our communities a little bit longer with that added nurse support.
So how much of an increase in length of stay have you seen? Is that a number you have off the top of your head?
We don't, I mean, not necessarily.
Just a
completely
guesstimate?
I'd say, I don't know, 8 to 12 months.
Wow, that's huge. So this is, I've written a little bit about this, but I think it's one of the biggest missed opportunities in senior living is, I was talking to the folks at Juniper Senior Living, good friends there, and they've started doing some case management stuff. And I said, so what's it done to your length of stay? And she said, well, not really that much. She said, I think we've got a month. But if you get even a month's increased length of stay over 1,000 people, that's like 10 or 12 or 15 extra apartments filled a year.
Right.
It's a huge, huge number. So
Yeah.
so you're doing even better than that, and that's really amazing.
I think so. You know, ultimately, it's a hard thing to measure.
Of
But
course.
even with our Live to Be Healthy type of programs and exercise program, I mean, we've really seen people from having a walker to going without walkers. And you have to assume a change like that is significant in the number of months.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and just their overall lifestyle.
Right.
I mean, they're.
Well, and then they become just tremendous stories to tell to new prospects, and so it starts to really cascade
Right.
to grow your business. So.
Yeah, one of the things you'll see today, even at our vendor hall, is our partnerships. And you know, one of the things that we're very proud of is when you do come live in our community, we're seeing 87% improvement in strength.
Wow.
And when you do those type of measurements, you're seeing less falls, you're seeing longer life. So.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate
Thank you.
this.
You're
This is
welcome.
like an added bonus when I'm here to speak, and
Yeah.
you know, I just really applaud your success and what you're doing. And I think that the industry as a whole can learn so much from what you're doing. So I appreciate
it.
your
Thank you.
willingness to share.
Thanks.
You bet. Thanks,
You bet.
Steve.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.